September 11th, 2001. Two numbers, one day, a moment frozen in time and etched into the soul of a nation forever. Today, it's been 24 years. 24 years since we watched the towers fall, since we heard the sirens echo through lower Manhattan, since the world changed in a single morning. Every year we hear the words never forget, but remembering is more than hashtags and headlines, more than a once-in-a-year tribute. It's a promise to carry the stories forward, a promise to honor the lives lost and the lives that ran towards danger, not away from it. On this special episode of Gold Shields, we're not just remembering, we're reliving. We'll bring you the powerful story of one of those heroes, a man who stood in the smoke, the rubble, and the chaos, and gave everything he had for people he never met. His courage will leave you breathless. His humanity will bring you to tears, and his story will remind you that heroes still walk among us. So to those who say never forget, this is your reminder of why that matters. Thank you for joining us today on this unforgettable, emotional, and proud 9/11 special of Gold Shields.
Welcome to Gold Shields. Join NYPD veterans Tom Smith and Dan Murphy. With over 50 years of combined experience chasing drug lords, dismantling cartels, and hunting terrorists. Now they pull back the curtain, sharing raw, unfiltered stories from the front lines and the heroes who stood beside them. No topics off limits. This is real. This is true crime. This is Gold Shields.
Hey, welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. How are you today, pal?
I'm good. Very special show that we do every year, our 9/11 show. And I don't know if we could get more special than this, Dan. This is a touching, incredible story that we're going to be passing on to everyone today.
You're absolutely right. And we're blessed to have the guest we have on today to tell a story of an exceptional young man who saved many lives, selfless, brave, courageous, whose story needs to be told. And we're very honored to have our guest to tell it today. Tom, who do we have?
Yeah, you know what? Just to say real quick, society throws around the word hero very easily, talking about sports figures, talking about celebrities, talking about this. And the word hero should just be so revered and set aside for certain people. Because I think the definition of a hero is not just the selfless act that everyone turns to say you're a hero. It's also about your life and your upbringing and what you meant and what you did in that life. I think just gets the word hero more attention it should. And Welles Crowther defines every word, every definition of the word hero.
Absolutely.
In what he did on 9/11 in the South Tower. And we're going to get into that today because we have maybe one of the most special guests we've had on Gold Shields, Dan, and that is Alison Crowther, Wells's mother. Alison, it is an absolute honor and privilege to have you on Gold Shields today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to, that you're remembering Welles on this day and that you want to share some stories about Welles with your following.
It's our
Really
privilege. And
touched.
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. It's our privilege. Thank you for giving us your time. There's a lot of stories from 9/11, there's so many stories, right? Every person that was involved in any way, shape, or form has a story. Your son's story is one of those that stands above for all the reasons Tom just said before. But before we get into 9/11, tell us a little bit about your son, Welles Crowther.
Well, I'd love to. I could go on and on about Welles and actually our daughters too. All of our children were and are amazing people. Welles was, and I speak a lot at schools, and I am always certain to say to the students to whom I'm addressing, that Welles is a lot like them. He was just kind of an all-around kid, full of fun, full of adventure, very imaginative. He was dressed as a G.I. Joe for a couple of summers with a friend of his because that was their passion. I'd find him hiding in the bushes with a with a gun, fake gun, the whole thing. He even from a very, and I have photographs to support this, even from a very young age, he was jumping from the highest places. He actually was a Rockland County high diving diver champion at the age of 7 and 8, the county champion for high diving. He was absolutely, he didn't have a lot of competition, I'll say that much, because of his age. But he, again, was fearless, and he'd go off these high boards, and I don't know, that was just Welles. He had a great sense of humor. He had this very loving, caring nature also that was evident from very young. His younger sister, Honor, was 2 years younger. And when she was born, I have pictures of Welles, 2 years old, holding his baby infant sister, like with such care and pride. And that carried with him through his life. He was always very protective of his sisters and me. It turns out he felt I needed watching over. So anyway, that was Welles. He studied hard. He had a great work ethic. He wanted to start working as soon as he possibly could, getting working papers. But before then, he'd be out earning money, shoveling driveways in the winter or raking leaves in the fall. It just was Welles. So I guess he loved skiing. He was a great athlete from early on. Started out with karate, which I didn't approve of that much, but his father thought it was great, so they did that for a while. Tennis was something he did, but he was a great lacrosse player early on, and football, loved Pop Warner football and Little League. Although I think he found baseball a little on the slow side for him. His passion was moving fast and being able to hit, apparently, is what he said. Where else can you be in a sport where you can actually crash into people and it's okay? So that was ice hockey and lacrosse. That was Welles. So, and he was a hardworking student too. He was high honor roll all his 4 years of school at Nyack High School, but he had to work hard for that and study hard. So that was Welles.
And you know what? That goes with what I just said in the beginning of the show. It's not one act. It's upbringing. It's mindset. It's a moral standard of what you are. And what happened on September 11th is a reason of being brought up the way he was. And to touch on that, to get this, the identity of Welles started at 6 years old when his dad gave him a red bandana.
Yeah, it was somewhere between 6 and 8. He might have been 7 or 8. It's hard to remember exactly when, but that's when it happened. Probably 6. I think you're right. Yeah. Sorry.
And you know what? Either one. No, 6, 7, 8. I mean, you think about, you think about something that was given to you in a gesture when you're that young, and it goes until you're an adult. That means something. And it was that red bandana that everyone knew about him in sports, in, just his identity. He was at the firehouse. And that's what led to the man with the red bandana.
Yeah, that's how I identified him in the end, or in the beginning, really, of all of this. His father, he adored his father, and he was, as I said, very loving of me as well as family. But he idolized his father, and his father was a banker, but he was a member of Empire Hook and Ladder Company. And Welles followed him when we moved here and Jeff joined. Welles followed him to the firehouse from a very young age, helping out around the trucks and being with the guys. And then when he turned 16, he became a junior firefighter and, started marching along that path. So he really loved that. And his father used to say he came with the software installed. People, I guess we set an example of good behavior and good citizenship and being polite and respectful of others and hardworking. We did set that example, but he was like that from the time he was just a little guy. So he revered that red bandana that his father gave him. It was really special to him, and he carried it with him all the rest of his life. And um, the we went in to have dinner with Welles in the city the Sunday before September 11th, and we're walking across the street, and Welles pulled to go to the restaurant from where he lived, and Welles pulled out of his back pocket his watch, and not his watch, his comb, and maybe a wallet with a red bandana wrapped around it. And I looked at him and I said, Welles, are you still carrying that thing? You're working on Wall Street now. You're a grown-up guy. You're still and he said nothing. He just turned around and looked at me with the slyest cat grin smile on his face. Like, yeah, I am. And like, I'll always carry it. So thank God, it was how we were able to identify him after everything happened from the art. And it took a very long time. We sat there for many, many, many months with no recovery. And then and then once he was recovered, his body was recovered on March 19th. 19th, by the way, is his lucky number. That's when he was recovered, 2002. And then it was another almost 2 months before I read the story in the New York Times, and that was the references to the red bandana, and that's how we started uncovering the story.
Amazing. So he went on to Boston College, where he earned a degree in economics and ultimately became an employee as an equities trader at Sandler O'Neill and Partners, which put him in an office on the 104th floor of the South Tower. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's where he was this morning.
That's right. That's where he was. The best we could piece together from people reporting phone calls to loved ones, like the husband of a coworker who ended up perishing, apparently said that Welles had gone up. They saw what happened at the North Tower, which was the first tower to be hit. And Welles apparently was planning to go down to help out with another young man who worked there, who was also a volunteer firefighter, to help out at the scene of the North Tower. That's what they were doing. He went over to this young woman who also was a family friend and said, "Come on, Stacy, we have to get out of here." Excuse me, they were looking out the window of the scene, and she decided to stay for reasons. I guess she had a more senior position. She wanted to keep business going if that was possible. Nobody expected a second hit, right? Or what happened. So Welles then went down. Now, you all know your emergency service people. You don't take an elevator in an emergency situation. And so some of the elevators were not even working between the 104th floor and the 70th floor sky lobby, where the express elevators down to the ground were located. So Welles had to have been in the stairwell at about the time the plane hit the sky lobby, because the witnesses, the women he saved, said he showed no sign of injury. So my analysis of that is that he must have been right behind the door to protect him from the blast, and then was able to enter. I don't know. We'll never know for sure, but I just play with that thought every now and then. Anyway, so Ling Young and Judy Ween were the two women that were identified in the New York Times article as people mentioning this man in the red bandana. So I reached out to them after the article and spoke with them. I sent some photos back and forth, and they finally confirmed, yes, that was him. Ling had seen Welles with the bandana pulled off his face. He'd taken them down to the 78th floor sky lobby, where it was from the 78th floor sky lobby to about the 61st floor, they estimate, because Judy Ween was the second to come down afterwards, and she thought that was also the floor. She saw a fire extinguisher just kind of lying there. So at about the 61st floor, Welles said, "You all keep going." He was carrying a woman over his shoulder, fireman carry, woman over his shoulder, down from the 78th floor to the 61st, put her down, said, "You have to keep going. I've got to go back up and get more people." And so that's when he had the bandana pulled off, and that's when Ling actually saw his face. So up he went back up. That's when he found Judy Ween and the group she was with. He directed them to to where the stairwell was open. He was the only person up there at the time that knew where the open stairwell was. So people heard him mentioning it. They saw the light. It's estimated he saved 12 of the 18 lives that survived the crash.
And that's one of the most important parts of this is his selflessness, like Dan mentioned before, making 3 trips. Not, okay, let me just get everyone out of here and then I can bring them down to the street and we're all out of here. It was, all right, we're to a safe point. You guys go. I got to go back. Did it again, came back down, did it again. And only thinking of everyone and as many people as he could save without one thought of himself. I mean, his training kicked in. And the one thing that always stood out when hearing this story, Alison, was all the survivors and all the people that he saved all said how calm he was. Didn't panic, didn't raise his voice, just in a calm way got everyone out of that area. And again, you can't teach that. That's just something in his soul and in his mind of doing that. And the one part of this I want to get to, everything you described and everything Dan and I are describing are accounts later on. But at the time, you're just watching all this on TV, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you got a message from him, didn't you? Did he call you at one point?
Yes, he did. That morning, actually, I believe the time on my phone was like 9:19. I think it was that, because I remember there's that number 19 again. He called. I was in my office. I was working at a company over in Westchester County, in the other side of the river, and so I didn't hear his call. His secretary called to say, and that was just like right after. That was before 9:00. The secretary called my office, and she said, "Welles just called. He wanted me to tell you he's okay." And I said, well, there was no TV or communication. There was no radio they finally brought in, but we didn't know what was going on. And I said, well, why wouldn't Welles be okay? I thought it was because my husband was not going into work that day. He was going to a golf outing. Something must have happened to him on the way. So she said, oh, don't you know? I said, no, what? She said, well, the World Trade Center has been hit by a plane, but don't worry, Welles said he's okay. And I'm going, wow, okay. So I hung up. And then that's when we heard the second tower was hit. Wells's call to me was, I don't know, at some point, it must have been obviously because his tower was hit at like 9:03. So, and the call came in after that. So he that's probably why he called, to say he's okay. I don't know what kind of phone he got or or maybe his cell phone. I don't know. But anyway, fortunately, a son of friends of ours worked for Verizon, and they were able to save the message. Mom, this is Welles. I want you to know I'm okay. So we have that recorded. Thank God. Anyway, so that's what was transpiring. And then we heard the report that the tower came down, and I called my husband and I said, Jeff is gone. Jeff Welles is gone. I just knew in my heart he was gone. And my husband said, don't say that. He had plenty of time to get out. And I guess he did, but he didn't. So
I'm just trying to picture this brave, athletic young man with such a good heart, carrying people, directing people calmly, staying calm in the middle of an enormous crisis, and helping people survive who otherwise probably simply wouldn't have.
No, they would have all been lost.
They would have been lost. So now they each have lives, they each have families, they each have stories. Have you been in touch with either or any of those folks that?
Yes. In fact, we're pretty regularly in touch with Ling Young and her family. She had two sons and a daughter, and now she's got grandkids. We went to two of the weddings, the two sons' weddings. It's really wild, wonderful. Chinese weddings are pretty wild. It was great. And Also we've been in touch with Judy Ween and her husband, but she's very much emotionally affected by this. So we were in touch for a while, but not regularly, but she always came to things we asked her to come to. And then it's enough. We just don't want to put people to task. Turns out her husband had worked with my uncle and when for the Mobil or Exxon or something back in the day. That was an interesting coincidence. Anyway.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing. But I want everyone to realize how God works in certain ways of taking care of your son and making sure you knew what happened. So everything happens, and there's an article in the New York Times talking about an incident that happened on the 78th floor and people being saved by someone. And you just happen to read that article and just explain that whole situation and what transpired from there from that article, Alison.
Well, my husband was reading the New York Times, this was the headlines. So as soon as he saw the headlines, he said, "I can't read this. Here, you may be interested," because I was the one always searching, watching the documentaries, listening to the news reports, searching. Something drove me to keep looking for Welles. It's a mother's heart, I guess, and so to find her lost child. And so I took the article, I sat down, I went into our bedroom, sat down on our bed and started reading. And I came to the section that said 903 in the South Tower Sky Lobby, the 78th floor. Well, at that point, that was in the end of May. We knew Welles had been recovered. He actually was recovered with Lieutenant Donald Burns, who was FDNY, an incident commander of the South Tower, and his men. That's where they were all recovered together, blown out together, actually, across to the wall and hit up against 4 World Trade. And that's where they all dropped underneath that first ramp that was built to clear the space. Anyway, so I sat there and I said, well, Welles was in his office. I know that. He was in his office around before 9, and he got down to the ground floor, so he must have been in this area of the Sky Lobby at the time the plane hit. And if I ever see anything about what was almost like, if I don't see it here, I guess I'm not going to see it, right? And so I started reading it, and that's when I saw the references to the red handkerchief, the red bandana. I went, oh my God, Welles, there you are. I found you, was my immediate response. I said, I was just practically in tears. And I went running to my husband and I said, Jeff, I found Welles. Here he is. And he said, oh, don't get excited. It probably is. He was always like downplaying things because I guess it was just too hard emotionally for him to deal with it or to help or to hope even. So, I picked up the phone the next morning, Tuesday. That was Monday. When Aon was open, and I couldn't find anything about Judy Ween or where she lived, but there was a reference about Ling Young or where she lived. I couldn't find any references about that, but I did see that Judy Ween worked for Aon. So I called Aon Monday morning and I said, hi, I introduced myself. I don't expect you to give Judy Ween, for you to give me Judy Ween's number, but here's my number. And I think that it might have been my son that saved her. So if she'd like to give me a call, please have her call me. That afternoon, she called. And so I sent her photographs. She was in touch. They had like an email group that they kept in touch with all the people in the Sky Lobby. And so I sent her photos. She sent them around. Ling Young's son responded and said, my mom says, could you please send a more casual picture? So that's when I sent the picture of Welles standing with Harry Wanamaker, who was a family friend member of Empire and FDNY. And he had been captain of the John D. McCain and was the fireboat. And he had invited Jeff and Welles onto the fireboat in June of 2001 for a party or something. So I had that photograph, and Wells, when my husband took it, Wells said, "Dad, make sure you get the Twin Towers in the background." So there was Wells and Harry and the two towers in the background. And my husband always referred to it as two sets of Twin Towers. So, so I edited out the picture of the towers, and I sent that with Wells standing next to Harry to give them an idea of size or whatever. And so, then she identified, and her son said, "I wanted to make sure I wanted to see her instant reaction to seeing the photograph." So he held the picture against his chest, and his mom was saying, he said, "Mom, you ready to look at this man?" She said, "Yes." So he flipped it around, and he said, he saw the look on her face. It was just complete. Yes, that's the man. So they were very careful. And he also had said, well, to test, to just test a few things, like what color, what did this red handkerchief look like? And I said, well, if it was solid red, it wouldn't have been Wells. It would have had to have a pattern, like a bandana pattern paisley. Okay, he said. And they mentioned he was in a T-shirt. Wells, by the way, also would strip down easily. He could always take off his shirt for any particular necessary reason. So it didn't surprise me he was in his undershirt, right? Instead of a collared shirt with sleeves to do his work. So I said, well, it wouldn't have been like a tank top T-shirt. It would have been like a Brooks Brothers T-shirt with a high neck and short sleeves. Yes, that's right. Yes, that's it. He's the one. So that's how it all came about.
Fascinating. Just fascinating. Now, you alluded to, and we talked briefly, very briefly before we began recording, about some spiritual elements of this whole situation. Would you like to tell us and share some of that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll at a future date go into more depth about this, but the last weekend Wells was with us, he was very different. He was not exactly melancholy, but he was very thoughtful. He spent a lot of time looking over his photograph journal scrapbooks that he'd put together for the last couple of years of his life, pretty much. He wanted to be with us. He wanted to spend time with us. This was Labor Day weekend. The fireman's picnic, going to that, going up to see his sister in a final ballet thing for a summer intensive program she was in. He was running off to see what his friends were up to and all that sort of thing. But no, he really wanted to be with the family. It was like he was absorbing his whole growing up life. Right before I took him back, before I took him back to the train in Tarrytown, he said to me, "Come over and look at this picture, Mom." It was his senior picture from college, graduation picture. "I think I made a mistake." Well, he looked very handsome, but this was when they put gel in their hair. And he said, that was the look. "But I think I made a mistake." I said, "No, Wells, you're very handsome. Don't be silly. You look great." So I turned around and went to walk into the kitchen, and he stopped, and I turned and looked, and he said, Mom," he said, "I don't know what it is, but I do know this much. I know I'm meant to be part of something really, really big." That was basically the last thing he said to me before he left home, the last time he was in his home. There have been reports and books written about other 9/11 victims who have had serious premonitions about what was coming, and also then family members' spiritual messages. So I was part of this story a long time ago. The night before September 11th, started feeling very anxious. And I'm not really an anxious person, but boy, I was sensing, and I've had premonitions before in the past. So I wasn't thinking this was a premonition. I was just thinking, there's something so terribly wrong. I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm flying apart in 1,000 pieces. There's just something so wrong. So I went down. Oh, and I know, I was in the kitchen. I never use the F word. I use it sometimes more now than ever. But I really never use it. And I'm going, F me, F this. There's something so wrong. I don't know what it is. I just don't know what it is. So I go downstairs to do some work on my computer. And my laptop, my hands are headed down. It's not even touching, and the screen fries, like electrical fries. So I said, okay, I'm going to bed. So I didn't sleep all night. I got up early the next day to go work out over in Westchester, which at a club where it was near where I worked. And I'm on the Tappan Zee Bridge, still like white knuckle driving. I was so tense. And suddenly into my head comes these words. I know what this means. I'm going to die today. And this is like 7:00 in the morning. The minute I heard those words, I felt like my chest opened up and a brilliant light shot out. And now I'm like this little bean-sized misty place above my forehead, driving along on the Tappan Zee Bridge. But I was instantly at complete serene and utter peace. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to die today. I wonder how it's going to happen. I don't know why it's going to happen. I wonder why it's going to happen. I wonder how it's going to happen. Oh, well, it's better than what I've been going through. And then I thought, well, that's crazy to say. Why is planning a business meeting? Why is death worse than that? So I thought to myself, oh, maybe I better go see a doctor. That was my solution, right? And then I'm like, where did that message come from? It was a deep voice. It was like a voice, but it was an understanding. There's something called clair. I'm learning about this clair audience, which is getting messages through sound or through your ears that are not really coming as sound, but it was like inside and coming from outside, but inside of me at the same time. It was just a really unique and bizarre experience. But that's how the message came to me that day. So I kept driving, and I took a shortcut behind Tarrytown that I love to take between reservoirs to get over to the Sawmill Parkway. And that morning, there were thousands of up-spiraling mists, all the same height on either side of the bodies of water I was driving through. And I looked at that and I said, well, I do know this much. Today is a very evil day. That's the message I got. Today is a very evil day. I don't know what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. I'm going to die anyway. Oh, well, let's see what happens. I was like no sense of fear or foreboding, just objective understanding. And because of that, I felt so guilty for days that I couldn't figure out what the hell was going to happen better than I did. Like, who would be involved? How, other than me, anything I could have done to save people. So I had a series of understandings after that. Maybe epiphanies. I don't know. But like the Thursday morning, I woke up and I thought another understanding was that this message was just meant for me specifically. It wasn't meant to do anything really about it. It was just meant for me. And so I called my minister. I said, I have to talk to you Friday morning. I think it was Friday morning. I said, I want to meet with you. He said, let's sit in my office. I said, no, we have to go into the sanctuary and sit in front of the cross, because I want you to know what I'm going to tell you is the God's honest truth. And he listened, bless his heart. He'd also been a volunteer firefighter. And he listened and he said, you weren't meant to stop the freight train. And he said, you'll know what to do. And I said, that's just the problem. I have no idea what to do. And he said, don't worry, your heart will tell you how. And I mean, that was such a blessing gift that he gave to me, that gave me peace. It felt like a big burden had been taken off my shoulders. Maybe I wasn't meant to figure it out right away. I've got some things figured out now of work I'm doing and how we're working with Welles' story, but it was very tough back then. So,
Well, we all believe, I mean, Dan and I, the way we were raised and what we feel, God does send messages to prepare you. May not lay out the entire message, and usually doesn't. Kind of lets us figure some stuff out on our own, but gets a particular message out there, and hearing that story is chilling, because we've heard them. We've heard them numerous times, even on this date, with don't don't take this route to work today. No, stop and get the bagels because someone at work needs it. Just things like that, and that the endless stories of that. And, hearing that and then what inevitably happened, then you start putting it all together, and faith is real.
Yes.
God's real.
Yes. And, I think that we're all capable of hearing God's voice if we just open our hearts to it. And and at my weakest moments, and I've had some for sure. One of them was in the winter after, it was like January, February, maybe, of 2002. And I was sitting looking at old photographs of the children and of Welles. And there was one with Welles holding up a little Easter basket filled with eggs in his little Eton suit, dressed for church. He was probably 2 or 3, maybe 3. And I just looked at that and I started to cry. And I said, God, why did somebody have to take this beautiful soul away from me? And, please help me. I cried for help. I said, God, please help me. I need help. I'm like ground down to the ground. That was about 5:00. That happened in New York. My sister-in-law is Italian, lives in Rome. She called me about 10 minutes after that. So now it's midnight in Rome, right? And she said, Alison, I don't know what it was that made me pick up the phone and call you right now, but I felt like I had to pick up the phone and call you right now and tell you this. She's a very interesting woman. She was an actress. She's done a lot of international work with people. She's met the Dalai Lama a couple of times. He gave her a picture, which I have now, which is nice.
You got that going for you, which is nice.
Yeah. And she said, I just had to tell you this. She said, I met with a religious man today and I told him Welles' story and he said, God will miracle him. And that's the message I got after 10 minutes on my knees to God saying, please help me. From midnight, from Rome. It was a beautiful thing.
Yep. And it is. It ends up, you're looking back on it, ends up being a beautiful thing because it shows and it instills in us we're not alone. And there's someone looking out for us. Even unexplainable things that don't make sense at the time. Losing Welles doesn't make sense at the time. And then looking back on, miraculous things that happen, it just kind of eases it a little. And that was one of my next questions I wanted to ask you. With everything that happened, once the story gets out and the man in the red bandana story just circulates and ESPN and documentaries and books, does it become a little overwhelming for your family, or are you just celebrating that now people know what your son did?
It's not overwhelming. I try to keep organized. I'm handling most of it. I'm handling most of it. My older daughter wrote a children's book for Welles, so she does some things, beautiful things about that. It's not overwhelming, but we don't celebrate either. It's a sense of responsibility that we have, that to carry his story as honestly as we can and to work to bring the story to people to help bring good into the world. And that was something I knew right from the beginning. That first day, I knew as I was lying there in bed, practically in a state of collapse, that I couldn't pick up guns and go after the bad guys, but I could bring good into the world. That was my weapon. So that was I've gone to just about every speaking engagement I've been invited to do. And there've been a lot. I went to Jordan and spoke to leaders from 5 Arab countries back in 2015, I think that was. They were working to see about how leaders, academic, religious, business leaders, they filmed me making a statement for Nursat Radio, which is a Catholic station based there, because in Jordan, Islam and Christianity are side by side. There's no evidence of Judaism, sadly, but that's, I guess, in this world, understandable. Anyway, and so the woman said, what you have to say is going to be broadcast across the Arab world. So I take this as just a huge responsibility. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that working with really fine educators, we were able to develop the Red Bandana Project, which are lessons on leadership, caring for others, team, the power of one, bridging divides, bringing understanding between two disparate groups, bridging divides, forgiveness, and carpe diem. And this is when I go to the lessons are beautiful. We have got the middle school lessons now up. This was done 10 years ago. So we have now, thanks to the Fetzer Institute, based in Kalamazoo, Michigan, whose mission was to study how love and forgiveness can work in the world. And a friend of our son's from Boston College was spearheaded us getting involved with that. They funded our development of these lessons. 7 lessons separately for elementary school, middle school, high school, sports teams, camps, and youth programs. A whole complete workbook that's available on our website. But also, we have digitized the middle school lessons thanks to generous donations from Empower. And so the middle school lessons are available for no charge to anybody, free to download. And those are also available on our website, which has a new address now that I really should say, because some fishing company got a hold of our CrowtherTrust.org, so don't ever use that. It's Welles, WELLES, Crowther, CROWTHER, trust.org now. That's our official website. And the website's been all updated. It's great. We've got a lot of good people watching out for us, which is a good thing.
That's really good. And, there's been books. There's been children's book about the man in the red bandana, and a 27 feature documentary, apparently Gwyneth Paltrow. I haven't seen it yet, but I should watch it. She narrated it. Tell us about that. Were you and the family involved in that?
Yes, we were. That's a 90-minute film. It started out, to our understanding, it was just going to be a sort of a short documentary, ended up growing into a large film. Matthew Weiss produced that. And we're just sticking strictly with documentary formats with people now. Tom Rinaldi really did a fine work, a 13-minute documentary for ESPN, and he wrote the book, The Red Bandana. And then he wrote a younger version, edited to a younger version in blue cover. So red cover for the adult version, blue cover for the, middle school and younger version. So, yeah.
Well, you know what? It's one of the most heart-wrenching but uplifting stories of 9/11. And I know, not knowing your son, but I know he's proud of you and he's proud of your family in what you're able to do in getting the story out there and keeping his memory alive of being a hero as we open the show. And that's what he is. And you can't look at a red bandana anymore and not think of him. Whether it's on someone, whether it's in someone's pocket, whether it's wrapped around a dog's neck, it doesn't matter. That will always be instilled in so many people's minds of that representing a absolute hero.
Thank
And you know what, Tom, I'm going to take it one more than that. Not only does it represent, and I think to me it represents more than just his heroism that day, it represents what his actions and his life stood for, which is that selflessness, that dedication to others, that commitment to helping other people. Doesn't matter where you're from in the world, doesn't matter what you look like. When we need each other, we have to be there for each other on this earth, right? He lived it that day in a way that I hope resonates for generations to come.
Thank you.
Amen.
Well, you'll help carry that forward. People have said to me, where was God that day? Why wasn't God there that day? And I my response was God was everywhere that day, acting through not only through Wells, but through so many other people, helping others in many different ways. And the firematic services going up the stairs with their gear on. I mean, just knowing what they were facing. I mean, yeah. So I think we spend too much time thinking evil is all powerful and everywhere. And yeah, I guess it is. But I say to kids, you can't be afraid. You just need to be aware that it's out there. And you have to be aware and that it's out there, but don't be afraid. Just be aware and be prepared and face it down. You got to face down evil.
Well, if we know anything about God's word is always true, and God lets us know very clearly that evil will be defeated. His love and his grace and his power and his strength are going to overcome evil ultimately in this earth. On this earth, he gave people free will. So people say, how can God allow that? God allows people to do evil on this earth because he gave us free will. But when he reigns over this earth again, that's going to be gone. Satan and his powers of evil are all going to be crushed instantly. We know how it ends. So get on the good side of it, right? And clearly Wells was on the good side of it.
Thank you. Well, I have this theory because another friend, I get sometimes very hard questions and people worry about that. I said, don't. I said, I grappled with very hard questions, but I've always grown as a result. So one friend of mine said, why does evil exist in this world? And I said, well, I can't answer that. I'm not qualified to answer why it does, but why? And she said, well, you have to. Of all people, you have to be the one to answer that. So I thought, well, okay, let me try this. Perhaps we're all here to grow our souls. And if there was no evil, there'd be nothing to grow our souls against. And so that's how I look at it. It's like a foil for us to throw ourselves against to grow and be better. So that's how I look at the role of evil. I wish it didn't exist, but I guess I don't think it exists on the other side. So, that's how I look at it.
Well, us on our little show that we have here that happens to thankfully reach a good amount of people, we're going to keep Wells's memory alive, and can't thank you enough for joining us today and telling this such important message. Not just a story, a message is what I think we got out of this. And thank you so much for this and a very memorable special 9/11 show, which we try to do every year. And when we figured out that we were going to have you on, that was a no-brainer to make this our special show for the year. And thank you so much for your strength, for your story, and everything that goes into your faith. Thank you, Alison.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Dan, and thank you to Terry Schulte-Strada, who introduced us. So thank you all.
The amount of times that we thank Terry on this show for people that she's gotten us with, it's endless. We just got to keep putting Terry in the credits.
She's amazing. We met when we went down to Gitmo. That's when we met. Down to the hearings. And, we were just friends right away. And I said, anything I can ever do to help you or support your work, let me know. Yep. So I got a call like almost right away. Come on down to Washington. So
yeah. She's the best.
She's an exceptional person and she's doing great work, as are you.
Oh,
turning an amazing, incredible tragedy into something so supremely beneficial for people of this world. And that's what we need. Turn tragedies into good.
Thank you. I just every morning say, God, please show me the way. I'll follow the path. Just please show me the way.
And this is our special time of the show, and it's so fitting for this episode and what we just heard to pray for our law enforcement officers, our firefighters, our first responders, and the families of victims out there throughout the world with whatever they encountered. Keep them in your prayers. Keep saying a prayer for them. They need our strength. They need our prayers. No matter how strong they are, the more the better. Just keep them all in your thoughts, especially around this time of year. In what happened on September 11th, there were so many heroes, and we just heard about one today. So to wrap this up, for my partner Dan Murphy and Alison Crowther, an incredibly strong woman and great story, and the memory of her brave son, Welles Crowther. Thank you for joining us today. Everyone out there, don't go anywhere. We got overtime coming up, and please stay safe. We'll see everybody soon.
All right, welcome back to Gold Shields. We're actually here in the OT, the overtime. And Tom, almost don't know where to start with how impactful, courageous, strong, and incredible that story and that family is. And Alice,
There isn't a start. It's
no,
just a story that we've heard for years, and now to hear it firsthand from Allison and what they went through and the connections and all that, it just, I had a chill for 50 minutes hearing everything she was talking about. It's an incredible story that just needs to keep getting told because of what it involves.
yep, Welles Crowther was the young man's name. September 2001, he perished performing acts of incredible selflessness and bravery, leading many to safety who would have been dead. And he did it with a red bandana, the one his father gave him, this precious gift he got when he was just a child. So we want to make sure that our audience knows about this young man. The man with the red bandana is in books. It's in that documentary. Learn more about him and try to learn what he lived for, what he stood for. That's the real powerful lesson here, isn't it, Tom?
Oh, that's what we said in the beginning, and I just, it was something on my mind, and I'm glad I just had the opportunity to say it, that, heroism isn't one act. It's not. It's an upbringing, it's a mindset, it's a morality check, it's everything about one person. It's not one event. And you could hear, the way he was raised and what he thought of his teammates, his classmates, his friends, and how he acted, and all that. And one part we didn't get to was in 2006, he got posthumously into the FDNY, appointed. So that dream came true for him even after he was gone. So
So he
it's
went to
just it's one of those stories, Dan. We could sit here for 2 hours, and it's
right.
just for 2 hours we'll have a chill.
Incredible young man who got a great education at Boston College in economics, had a good paying job, but had an application for the FDNY that it was incomplete that was found when he passed away. And they posthumously put him in to the FDNY, and that's a great tribute. He did work with them that day. He was helping them, guiding them to certain things. This is a young man that we should all be proud was an American, but more importantly, we should understand what he did and why, and we should apply that to our own lives whenever possible,
No
which is
doubt
to
about it.
be
And
selfless.
thank you everyone for joining us today. And if you noticed, no ad reads today, no promos today, just the show, because that's what Dan and I decided to do, and just the story today, because it's that important, and everyone who has been following us for these 3 great years knows what 9/11 means to us. And thank you for joining us today, and always, and keep them, all the victims of 9/11, in your prayers, and the heroes that rose up that day.
And their families who go on. And if they go on like Alison Crowther, which is to share the story and to increase awareness of some basic facts and how we should live our life, then it's a good thing. So
Absolutely.
she's incredible. Thank you, Tom. A great show. A great tribute to a hero from 9/11, a day that changed everyone.
Absolutely. Stay safe, everybody. We will see everyone soon, and never forget 9/11.